Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Thanks again for hopping in to join us on exploring how to upgrade our lead generation. Today, we're talking about the 6th book in our summer series, which deals with the difficulty corporations have implementing artificial intelligence. Before that, let me quickly remind you, you can get new episodes in this series and even our back catalog just by going to whatever app you use for audio and typing in Funnel Reboot. You can also give us feedback. Please, I'd love to hear from you either on Instagram or on Twitter via our webpage form. We're available at all those places under the name Funnel Reboot. Are you looking at how your marketing can use AI? It's good if you are, but that's not enough. It takes more than knowing how it works. Whether you are embedded in a marketing operations role or you're an executive who oversees it, you must also figure out how to get your organization to buy into AI. You'll need stakeholders who own precious data. You'll need knowledge experts to train your models. You'll possibly need operations folks because maybe you'll change what is delivered as a result of AI. Lastly, you're going to need money. And getting that money will take you proving to the C-suite that AI yields a positive ROI. So by now, you're probably wondering how you can implement AI. Well, if you are, you will definitely be interested in the framework that's called the AI Marketing Canvas. It's all detailed in a book by the same name, co-authored by Raj Venkatesan, along with Jim Lecinski. He's a professor at the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. He's also the co-author of a book called Cutting Edge Marketing Analytics. And before coming to Darden, Venkatesan taught graduate students at the University of Connecticut. He received the MBA Teacher of the Year award. His academic history involves stints at University of Houston and the University of Madras. He's consulted with firms in the technology, retailing, media, industrial goods, and pharmaceutical industries on analytics and AI, and I'm so happy that he's joining us. Let's go hear from today's guest. All right, I'm very glad to have with me today Professor Raj Venkatesan. Welcome, Raj.
Thank you for having me here, Glenn. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And so this book, which has only recently come out, is called The AI Marketing Canvas, a 5-stage roadmap to implementing artificial intelligence in marketing. And you co-wrote this with Jim Lecinski. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Can you tell me how this came together?
Yes. So this has been something Jim and I have been talking about for a few years now. Jim, in his previous role, was at Google and in a senior leadership position there. And he used to speak at the University of Virginia to our MBA students. And we've known each other through that. And we've been talking about the developments in the world of computer science, data, analytics, AI, and marketing. And so as we were talking about it, we realized is that my undergrad is in computer science. I've done research in analytics and AI and marketing. His role in Google, he's been exposed to all of this. And we come at it from two different worlds, but with a similar kind of, you would say perspective on marketing. And what we realize is that there's a lot of there's a lot of data and there's a lot of improvements in technology and developments in business models that is coming together. And we realize that whatever has been written about AI is either too high level as AI versus humanity or too tactical in terms of 10 steps for better email campaigns. That's great. That's important. But it really didn't speak to the CMOs in terms of like a leader of a marketing organization as to what they should be doing about AI. And that's kind of where it all began, is to think about what is the strategy for a marketing organization and how should they look at AI in terms of improving their marketing strategy, and also what is their strategy for including AI in marketing. That's kind of how
Yes.
it started, and we decided to combine forces and write this book.
Excellent. And yes, I would say that the average CMO is, it's due for them to find out about this if they have not done so. But, they're probably busy going about their day-to-day function in a company. And you try to help them understand that even though it started from outside of marketing, that the time for AI to enter the marketing function is here. You used a reference to 3 waves, and I liked it because it took me back to the book The Third Wave by Alvin Toffler, and it seemed to harken back to that comparison where, this is a maturity of how the world is going. And, you said in the first one, which I think everybody can identify with, that first wave was mass marketing. Mm-hmm. To me, that's sell what you can make, right? Any color you want, as long as it's black, Model T. Mm-hmm. And then we got a little bit, of segmentation in there. You said that, that era, which went for most of the 20th century, we were able to get a little bit more niche marketing, but you said that in the beginning of the 21st century, we hit the second wave, which was the data-driven era of marketing. And you have pretty clearly said in the book that you think that's now ending as an era by itself, and that we're now heading into the third wave. So could you tell me, which is AI, could you tell me how that second wave is ending? And for anyone who hasn't been paying attention, what the distinction is between that data-driven wave and the AI wave?
Sure. I think the way we would think about the differences is that the data, it's a continuation, but there are some significant differences, right? So even when we were looking at the early 2000s or mid 90s, we had this whole notion about segment of one. That is, marketing is going to target each individual. And that, I feel like now we are realizing that potential. And when we were with the internet era and with direct mail, we were collecting a lot of data about customers, and we were looking at data about their transactions. So I like to think about this as the purchase funnel analogy, is that we were able to track people from awareness to action, right? Awareness, interest, desire, action. And by the data-driven phase, we were able to collect all that information. I think what has happened with big data and AI is that one is computing power has increased, but the types of data has changed. And what you're now able to see is how people are using the product and how are they talking about the product with each other. And that ends up becoming a big shift in how, for marketers, it's a new insight into consumers, because so far we were able to say when somebody bought a product, like, I like to use the analogy of cars, where before, like maybe Tesla or the new tech that is there in cars, you knew that somebody bought your car and that's it. And then service was the way you would re-engage with the consumer. And then when they came and hope and work through the service to get them to buy back. With like Tesla and others leading the way, how people are using the car, when they're charging the car, and what they're playing in the car. And of course, there are privacy concerns that are with it, but still you're able to understand consumption, which really, and that happens in in any B2B setting, it happens with like cloud and any kind of cloud interface. It's all about consumption, that you can understand how people are using your product. And that changes the game now. That to me is a big shift. because now you're looking into you're able to engage with the consumer even after they bought the product. And so all this new type of data, text, video, uh, images, and IoT, all of this is about extending the purchase funnel into consumption and consumer interactions as a community with other consumers. And the ability to analyze all of that is where AI comes in. And that's where marketing is now moving into a world where you can engage with consumers one-on-one.
Right. So you brought up something there that I think we need to make sure we deal with right now. You talk about it later in the book, but this is where we get into moments, and that, the old paradigm of thinking, I just want to get them down the acquisition funnel, and once they buy, it's somebody else's issue. This is another part of that vision that we had of one-to-one marketing, where, okay, if you mean it, then that has to translate beyond just one moment. Your co-author, Jim Lecinski, was one of the co-authors of Google's Zero Moment of Truth. And, there are micro moments at work here. Can you maybe just tell us which ones you isolated down to so that we can broaden our sense of when we need to be there for that customer?
So I think the moments of truth model talks about, there's the zero, which was what Google and Jim was the main author in that. But the zero moment of truth is what really talked about the internet age, that brands need to be present online. And because consumers were looking for products online before they went to the store. So between when a brand communicates to when you meet the consumer in an online store or physical store, they are looking you up, right, online. And so you need to have the zero moment of truth. And then you have the first moment of truth where you're deciding on the purchase,
right?
Action. Then I think, and there was McKinsey that came up with the second moment of truth, which is consumption and sharing and the loyalty loop. And so that really fits with, I think, like with the AI and with all the new technology, with mobile and all the platforms like Facebook, Google, Instagram, Amazon. You are able to watch your consumers even as they are using your product. And that's true with YouTube. That's true with IoT. A lot of even in industrial settings, you have the industrial internet, right? And so you're able to look at how people use your product, and that can really shift your strategy. And so that's kind of like how the moment of truth works, right? And when you look at it from our angle of customer engagement, it maps on directly because we like the customer engagement framework in this case because it really expands on the consumption part and the relationship part of the world. So far, when you look at moments of truth, the second moment of truth is like as a continuum. What we are trying to do with the customer engagement model is say that acquisition is the beginning of the relationship. And then you go into retention, there is growth, and then advocacy or word of mouth, how the consumer advocates your product to others, like the NPS score. It's a nod to Net Promoter Score, that the advocates are your most strong, loyal consumers.
Yes. So you've expanded the kind of time range which a marketing leader needs to think of, well past the purchase. It's grown fourfold. And if I think of the amount of data that we have now, as you said, it extends past that acquisition, and we can see how they're using it. And they're starting to habituate themselves to wanting us to change how we deliver or are experienced in how our product functions for them. And there's a problem, though, that this causes. And I think this is where we see why the data-driven era can't do it anymore. You say in one part of the book that, you contrast and say how data is currently being used. You say we may be doing advanced analytics, which we can sit at, but it only will get better when we have a meeting on every Friday to discuss a spreadsheet, and we agree to a change or improvement, and then we go and only next week start to implement that. We have too much data, and that process is way too slow when there's something else that can be doing it for us, right?
Yes. And it speaks to the marketing. I think you're bringing up the marketing decision process here and how to use data and AI in a marketing firm. The decision process also needs to change along with it. And, the Friday meetings is an example of a static world where you would look at what you have and then make your decisions, and it assumed a certain cycle and a certain way in which consumers will engage with your brand. With the always on world, that is not the case. That is, you need some things that are just automated, right? And if you want to personalize your brand, ironically, you need machines to manage that scale. That is, to actually get a human connection with a consumer or with a business client, the scale is not humanly possible to manage, and
Correct.
the speed is not humanly possible to manage. And that you need to learn, and you still need the static world of learning and insights that you gain from training the models or estimating these models. It's still going to take some effort, and it's not going to be machine driven automated yet. It is going to be humans and data scientists and marketing analysts coming together to analyze all that data. But I think what is happening is that when you execute it and when you operationalize that, then those are the ones that are automated. The rules that you come up with from the model that you can then implement in the field, you need those technology and also business processes in place that it can automatically keep executing. And then you're looking at more it's almost like an assembly line production, right? Because when you're making widgets, you're sending them through an assembly line, and you have total quality management where you're once in a while picking in and seeing whether there is a flaw or not. And that's the same kind of attitude you need in marketing when you're running a model and letting it say respond to an email or a chat bot. It's just running. But you have humans in the back intervening once in a while to check whether there is quality control. And then once in a while you're but the development of the chatbot or the automated email response system and upgrades to that may not happen every day. It happens in regular cycles.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a really good analogy. And what made me not fear that kind of future and actually look forward to it was you reminded me, and we're all career marketers, that we've made these changes before. It's not that we have only stayed in the past. You reminded us how that era of moving out of, let's say, traditional media into digital, and the era of moving into data. I mean, we all know we probably put out job descriptions that mandate those as requirements. Yeah. So we're used to it. And you've just said, okay, now we have to realize we've got to jump in on this next one, because it's going to be just like those things, with the important difference that it's moving at 10 plus times the velocity of those other ones, right? Because the machines don't slow down, no vacation, no coffee breaks, right? So we better get going. So with that, let's start into the framework. The first of the steps is the foundation. And what I found really helpful there was, as you moved me into the foundation, you said, remember, statistics. And I can tell you, I don't fondly remember my business school statistics, but, I made it through. And you said, look, AI is going to have parallel entities, just like you had certain kind of statistical analysis that you did for things, right? Can you maybe tell us what becomes possible when we look at the data that is sitting in our orgs, and we start to think of, all right, well, what do I have on hand, and what might I apply those kind of data science or even artificial intelligence models to my data?
Yes. So, great question. I think the foundation is basically, it's like we call it the foundation with the analogy of building a house, that you need to have a strong foundation. And data is the foundation, and good, clean data. And the most important part about that is like first party data directly from consumers. I think that is the key thing that we want to emphasize in there, is that there is a lot of data, but for marketers, what you need is what we call the customer focused data set, that you are looking at an individual customer, Jill, and everything that is the brand has interacted with Jill about, right? So Jill is the center, and everything data that is focused around Jill, right? And then that's a difference from traditional data sets that are more siloed and functional, which are important for operations. But the big task is, how do you move all of that into a customer focused data? Now, when you do that, the next part of your question was interesting, is where do you apply it? And this is a really, really important point. We talk about in the experimentation phase that you need to experiment, let 1,000 flowers bloom. But even there, you need some direction in terms of what are the direct places where you want to start. And what we talked to a lot of leaders in marketing, and one of them talked about this concept of value pocket. And what it really means is that the way they think about analytics, data, AI, is that what are some spaces in my customer journey where a data-driven insight will increase value for my consumers. And that's where we begin.
Yeah. And you lead into number 2, which is experimentation, and I like that. I kind of felt it's interesting because at some point someone has to bring up the topic of money, and AI will, over the length of the implementation, cost an organization enough that it'll get the attention of a CFO or other C-suite people, but that value pocket that you talked about, to me, what I liked was that you encouraged us. You didn't steer us away from looking for ways in the short term to demonstrate the value. You did hold our feet to the fire and said, even for an experiment, just try to, like, in pencil, write out what value, what lift, what additional benefit would the organization see. Can I ask why that early in the process do you ask us to try to quantify what we're going to get out of this?
I think there are good observation. I think what we are trying to do here is set up the business case as we are moving forward in this. And a lot of times when we have talked about presenting earlier versions, and also in the data-driven analytics world, when we were presenting it, a lot of times, like, I've had people ask me, well, seems to be that you're asking us to invest on the faith that it'll work, and these cost millions of dollars. I don't think my management is going to go for that. And I think that is a valid observation of people on the field, right? In the field. And so and there is another thought when you think about in a different field. Clayton Christensen, when Disruptor Innovator's Dilemma talks about, even when you are having this new project and an incumbent, how do they react to disruptors? He talks about how you need to always ask early on the new venture to show ROI, and make them think about that, and not just plan and try different things. So you should experiment, but you should always think about what is the return early on, partly because that will focus your energy on the right tasks, and also convince your peers and maybe leaders above you of the value of these activities, and you're collecting this information, because down the road you will ask for the big ask. You will be asking for more money, but showing things that worked, and also showing, hey, these are things that didn't work, and I know that this didn't work. I'm better off for that, because when I now invest, I know where it is going to work.
Right, right. So this is not a, begin with a big bang and a glitzy, set of promises to the board. This is instead starting almost skunk works, right?
Yeah.
Kind of in a way that the Innovator's Dilemma talks about, and then revealing those small wins. And you even go further. You went to a length to ask people to make special effort to include others in the process. You suggested, grabbing them, bringing them into a conference room for a lunch and learn, or maybe taking them out and explaining things, and giving even more than the average amount of input that you would have for another marketing project. I'm just curious, as you move beyond that, first experimentation, and you have that, why do you feel we want to give that kind of understanding to others? Is this really just to get the business case passed, or is there something more here that you might want from your operations or your call center or some other department that's going to help later on? What's really driving your reason for going to these lengths?
Yes. So great observation. As we researched this book, what stood out for us was, and with Jim and his experience as a marketer, is that marketing is a team sport, that it is something where it cannot happen within the marketing function. And the way, like, I'm growing to think of marketers as, we should call ourselves as the chief customer advocate within the company. And that is our role, as the chief customer officer or advocate, because we are the ones who in the company who are talking about the customer and doing what is necessary for the customer. And the customer touches not just the marketing function. Actually, the customer touches every other function in the organization. And and for them, it is the same brand. And so for a marketer to be really effective and to really deliver on their goal of superior customer experience and customer engagement, they need to help the customer across the organization, which includes operations, call center, purchasing, and even product development and R&D. And so successful marketers are the ones who realize this and embrace that and brought people along early on, and really talked about how we are here to serve the customer. That's the goal of the organization, and we are all serving the same purpose.
Right.
And so that's kind of our philosophy, and I think it applies to AI or even any other marketing initiative.
True. I'm chuckling because, for a few decades now, marketers have been really focused on getting aligned with sales. And, those marketers who were rolling up their sleeves and doing that, they will be glad, because now they have to do it in many other places. So all that practice is, not lost. But if they hadn't spent their time in that area, those marketers are going to struggle. And then I suppose there's also, those people will bring their data, they will bring their ideas. And I guess this is where expansion really gets going. It even seems to morph into transformation. And when you get to the transformation stage, you made an important distinction that, now we're getting to a critical mass. And one of the things that I suppose probably has happened up until this point is that this thing that marketing has hatched, they've maybe had a few outside consultants, or they've been using a third-party tool to dump the data in, for data hygiene, for running analyses. And, you mentioned chatbots for some of the things like website implementation. But we hit this inflection point, I think, at transformation. And I'd like you to explain to me kind of what you see has to change at that point if this is really going to graft onto the organization. That you think some things at this point have to be like intentionally looked at, and we either keep going this way or this is the moment where we have to make a change. What changes?
Yes. So I think it's actually, it comes two ways, strategic as well as algorithmic. So let me talk about the tactical algorithmic way first. And then I think most off-the-shelf software for AI work to a certain extent because they're general purpose and they're meant for, and you're trying it out. And, so like an email marketing campaign, there are some options that you will do, and then based on that you can automate the subject line or heading and such.
Yes.
But then if you want to get into take that and connect it into the customer's loyalty program or the customer's click through, after they click through, when they go to the website, what did they do on the website, what did they link, browse on that, and connect that into a report that goes into the salesperson. And then when the salesperson calls the customer, the reaction and the objections from the customer and all, and that connects back. So you start quickly seeing, right, like you see off the shelf doesn't work anymore. You need to start customizing, and you need to make it work within your current systems. And also you need a specific way in which you want the data organized, or you have some algorithms for prediction for call, like cross-selling, or that you may want to build that will help specifically your salespeople. So when you do that, that's the moment where off the shelf stops working and you start customization. Yes. And that is when you have this inflection point where you're looking at this has implications at a strategic level on whether you're building or buying.
Yes.
Right? Whether you're building your inside data science group, or are you buying a data science company and bringing that talent into your organization and integrating it into your
process. And within an organization, this changes from OpEx to usually a blend of OpEx and CapEx.
Yes.
So you must start, if you hadn't already thought that you should advocate to people within your organization for this, at this point you absolutely need them. This can't be skunkworks anymore. But you hold out, I suppose, like a promised land, right, where if you do all this properly, then your organization may be fortunate enough to get to stage 5.
Yes.
Right. So Can you explain how that works for us? And I'll tie in a concept here that you bring actually at the start of the book, but I think it's kind of valuable here, is we have to be mindful that there are maybe limits to how far we can grow today. AI has been around for the better part, decades in some uses, but by, let's say, Silicon Valley giants, it's been used heavily for the last decade. And you talk about how there was 2 tiers of companies, and maybe we should aspire to being one of the nodes in this ecosystem, but you talk about a tier even above that. So maybe if you could just take us through how that goes.
Yes, great. This stage 5 we feel is like really unique for the AI world and what you talk about networks versus nodes, because technology, basically internet technology, digital technology, has enabled platforms to function, because it is now helping a lot of people come together at the same time and do business with each other. This kind of, it goes, a networked business model is not new. I think we talk about it in the book that it goes back to the age of railroads or oil pipelines and, telephones, they're networks. So any business that is a network has network effects, and that can help them grow. And what AI does is it adds a new layer on top of the network effect called data and network effect, where you're enabling data and algorithms to learn more. So when you're building all this as you go through transformation, what you've done is learned how to build those things internally. Now, what you can do because of technology and cloud services is you can turn that into a services arm and a new business consulting wing. And it is very interesting because we've always had services on top of products in B2B. But what this is allowing is it is allowing cloud-based services, which is much more cost effective and also scalable. And so most organizations may not think of themselves as a network. Like Washington Post is an example we bring in here early on, as like they were a network of they were a newspaper, so they had a simple idea of what networks are, but what they really did was take it to the new world, where once they learned, when they started AI, they did it because in media, there was not many media specific AI products and they had to develop it on themselves. But when they did it, they felt, others may have the same need. And they created a platform, Zeus Technology, which is now allowing like other newspapers, right? Like LA Times or Chicago Tribune to actually tap into the technology. So they're not sharing data, the other newspapers, they're just taking their data and tapping into the technology that Washington Post has built to enable their newspapers to also get better. And that is creating a new revenue stream for Washington Post. And Starbucks has done something similar there. Coca-Cola is trying to do something similar as well. So you see a lot of these companies, when they grow down this curve, there's this promised land, as you said, where there's a new business model, and it's actually a tech business with all the benefits of scalability and higher margin that the tech giants benefit from, that you could do too.
Right. There's you have to be willing to be interoperable with these other ones, like Washington Post is going to the competitors, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but Zeus is understanding basically a topic cloud of things, and then where it's needed. If an article needs made, it can do it at least to a rough draft way faster than a writer could, and maybe a human writer gives it a last polish before it goes out. But it basically allows them to produce this content at a scale that is inhuman, right? It's not humanly possible. And they're happy to let other organizations take this sense because they figure those people in their own domains have similar needs.
Yes. And Zeus is absolutely content writing, but what they've done is also included content recommendation systems. They've included content moderation systems. So it becomes like a bundle or like portfolio of products that different others media agencies can tap into. And
Thank you for adding. So yes, it's not just the brute force. It's that, if we think of how Netflix has a hold of us, or how YouTube is able to curate things that, keep us engaged on the platform, that's the other benefit. And although they're not shared with us, I'm sure when WAPO wants to sell Zeus to another organization, they show them dollars and actual P&Ls that, show just how effective these things are at raising subscription rates and subscription retention.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. By the same token, though, when we look at the FANG companies, right? So, at the very basic, it would be, Facebook, Apple, and Netflix and Google. Perhaps Amazon is in there. You put them in their own category, right? You call them networks. So just explain to us why we might not want to get too fanciful in our thinking and dream that, we will be there. You say that they have this network advantage and, they've kind of built a moat around it, right?
I think they have, and also that the moat is the data and how they've been able to use data to create new products and go from Google, from search to Gmail to cloud to all the other things, and Amazon has done the same thing, Facebook too. And I think right now they're in a different league, definitely, but you can think of new people like Starbucks definitely comes up, where they have held their own, and especially in terms of retail and engagement of consumers in the retail world and the loyalty programs and mobile apps, right?
Yes.
So they've been able to do that. And Washington Post and New York Times, to a large extent, have held their own in the publishing world. And so, I think in fintech, you're going to see some real interesting things come up with the banks, with Zelle. We talk about it as an independent network that you can build, competing with the Venmos of the world. And so I think it's an interesting time where the big networks, digital networks, FANGs, have their dominance, but I wouldn't, for example, we talk about how Nike decided famously not to be on Amazon because they wanted to build their own. Or you can think of Nespresso, which has built something big, Nestle built without the help of any of these on its own. So they may not be in terms of scale as big, and doesn't have to be. But as a brand, you can gain a lot from building your own or coming up with a competing, cooperating network with your competitors. And so the idea is to think about networks and think about platforms and building business models around that. And you can still hold your own.
Yeah, I think the simplistic offensive or defensive stance probably doesn't apply here. I think there would be ideas that fall off the radar of a marketing organization if you keep it boiled down that simply. What brought it home for me was when you explained, let's take an Apple with Siri or Google's Assistant. So these are now putting in the hands of our buyers an ability to filter and use AI to get down to algorithmically what the signals are that buyer is giving off, and how the only things that get in, for example, with a speaker in your home, a smart speaker isn't going to give you 10 results like a Google search page does. It's going to give you one. So that to me brought home, so what I need to do as an organization is use AI internally, in this case, to at least be to expose enough information about who our ideal buyer is, and maybe what other information we have on this individual, maybe, or people like them. And that feeds into the network's AI. Yes. And I have at least a standing chance of being the recommendation for that person, with my AI interfacing with their AI.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it is what I believe will happen also is like the big networks, Apple, Amazon, Google, and you see this in the programmatic world too, is that they can develop private networks, and you will have a way for brands, big brands will have a way, like you said, to add more information into the system in a way that they are put in front of the brand, in front of the consumers, that is most appropriate for them. I think it's in the benefit of the big networks as well to work with the brands, because they also need to provide relevant recommendations to their consumers.
Right. So it can work together virtuously. I think it probably requires some serious conversations inside of an organization. I'm sure data governance comes into play, and the overall direction of the organization, which is, I think, an uplifting note to end on, because the marketer there now is, sitting shoulder to shoulder with the others making the most senior decisions That's something we marketers have long wanted.
Yes.
And we can actually lend something in there because the decisions that can give us those new customers can only happen once we've grappled with these issues, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think data is something that, as you said, uh, definitely uplifting note to think about it as an opportunity to actually improve the influence of marketing within an organization. And I think I would note that I go back to my notion, which I truly believe is that the marketers, and they think about themselves as the customer's advocate within the firm, I think they definitely will have more say and influence within the organization.
Right. Um, the book, and the canvas does a great job for mid to senior size enterprises. If I put you on the spot and asked you to try to specify for a smaller organization, let's say even, sub 500 people, we have, now at the level where the people who are actually on the front lines doing things are, just a desk away or a virtual workstation away from the decision makers. What kind of things would you say when they look at this canvas and they try to say, I don't know if we have all the resources to do all of this, but maybe we can just, hop along the top of the steps, or maybe we can just drill into one of them. What would you say to them that, you would want them to at least give the framework a chance to work at their level?
Absolutely. So I think it's actually an opportunity for smaller businesses because the first thing is that they don't have legacy costs. They don't have issues with connecting different disparate silos and different businesses. In fact, if you think about the history of Netflix and now, Warby Parker and all the digital natives, they began like that because they built the systems ground up in a way that helped them eventually.
Yes.
So I think for small businesses, that is one thing I always say is that the opportunity for the smaller organization is that they don't have the problems of the bigger organization of connecting different databases. So that's point number one. Point number two is if you are like 500 below, you still have a website and you have Google Analytics or HubSpot or Adobe in there, and that is collecting data about consumers. You have some way of connecting with your consumers through emails or like sales or a version of Salesforce that you have. And all of that is giving you information about consumers. And in fact, almost all these vendors also give some analytics that will go along with it, either in your paid search or, customizing your display advertisement or emails that you send or follow-up calls. So you can start there. And I think that will help you learn. So you don't need a big, massive database to do that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, we can definitely start. And I think for those of us who've been getting into data-driven marketing, this is a nice perch from which we can just take the next step. And I think the marketing canvas, what I like about it is that you feel before you move too many steps down that you have been given some reward for what you already did. So I like that in terms of, you feel like you can't go too far wrong. You're not 5 exits off the highway. You might have taken a wrong turn at one point, but that's okay. You can quickly do a U-turn and get back on track.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. If people listening to this would like to reach out and connect with you or your co-author, Jim Lecinski, what's the best way to find out about the book and for you?
So the book is available on Amazon and we both are on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to connect with you and learn about what you're doing.
That's great. And we'll have links to that in the show notes. Raj, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Glenn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And listener, if you've liked what you've heard today, and I hope you've learned a ton, please feel free to share this with someone else that you know is sitting on the fence with AI. And if you want to catch future episodes, wherever you listen to audio, go ahead and find our show and then hit the subscribe button. And I look forward to getting your recommendations for future books and future authors that we can have on the show to learn more. And you can catch up with me at Funnel Reboot or at HeyGlennSC.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.